Hello everybody and welcome back to this video where we'll be running over the top 5 airline stocks. As you saw in the intro, we have today Delta Airlines, Southwest Airlines, American Airlines, United Airlines and Spirit Energy. So first, we obviously want to understand how these companies have been performing in the most recent periods and whether they're in an uptrend or a downtrend. And by no surprise, these companies have been hit hard by the coronavirus, which obviously stopped more or less all the flight traffic, which means that the share prices of these companies have traded down. And as we can see year to date, Delta Airlines down with 27%, 11% for Southwest, 44% for American Airlines, 43% for United Airlines, and 39% for Spirit Energy. It is obviously no surprise that this is also the companies who have reacted most positively to the news regarding the vaccines, and it's very good for them obviously because that will mean that people will start flying more. But we can still see that even though they have all increased the last week, month and quarter, they are still a bit far away from the 52-week high. You can see here 32% for Delta Airlines, around 20% for Southwest, almost 50% for American and United Airlines, and the same for Spirit Energy. Next, we obviously want to understand whether these companies are earning any money in the end of the day, and by no surprise, if we look at the net income for the last 12 months, they are all suffering. 10.5 billion for Delta Airlines, 1.6 for Southwest Airlines, 6.3 for American Airlines, 5.6 for United Airlines, and around 200 million for Spirit Energy. So again, no surprise. If we take a look at the net profit margin, it's obviously also negative for all of them. 43% for Delta. Southwest Airlines actually doing quite okay here with 13%. American Airlines 26%, not that good. United Airlines 20%, and Spirit Energy is 31%. We can also have a quick look at the BNHM score and Sloan ratio. The BNHM score is a mathematical model that determines whether a company has manipulated its profit. We want this to be below minus 2.2, and we can see all of them with the exception of Spirit Energy is fine. If we look at the Sloan ratio, it identifies if a substantial part of the earnings are non-cash accruals, and we are not interested in this. We want this to be between minus 10 to 10%, and all the companies are in the green zone, so that is good. If we quickly go to the overview, we obviously ran through the stock, and the trend for all these stocks is an uptrend from a simple moving average perspective. The only one is negative is American Airlines from a 200-day perspective, but otherwise all of them are an uptrend as of today. On the net income part, all of them were losing money, which obviously means that they also had negative net profit margin. However, Southwest Airlines have done the best, followed by United Airlines. We then move into the return metrics and cash flow margins, and obviously all these companies are struggling, so we are more looking at who is doing the best in a bad, dire situation. If we take a look at the return on invested capital, we can see that Spirit Energy is doing the best with minus 4.5%, followed by United Airlines with minus 9%, minus 14 for American Airlines, minus 17 for Southwest Airlines, and minus 30% for Delta Airlines, so doing a lot worse than the others. On the levered free cash flow margin, we have a small surprise there where Southwest Airlines is actually having a positive 3.41, so that's a really good number. The next one is United Airlines with minus 16%, so a huge difference between Southwest Airlines and the remaining companies. Two of the most important sections are coming next. The first one is the balance sheet and ratios, and we obviously want to understand how strong the financial situation is of these companies. So we can take a look at the current ratio and cash ratio, which both of them in general, we would like that to be above 1. And we can see that Delta Airlines, Southwest Airlines, United Airlines, and Spirit Energy is doing fine on the current ratio. American Airlines doing less good with 0.74. On the cash ratio, it's more or less the same situation, with the exception that here United Airlines is also below 1, but it's not a huge surprise given the current situation. The next is the total assets versus total liabilities. We want this in general to be above 1.5. None of the companies are living up to that, but Spirit Energy and Southwest Airline are doing the best, and the one who are doing the worst is American Airline with 0.92. It's more or less the same story with the debt equity. Again, Southwest Airlines and Spirit Energy is doing the best, and American Airlines are doing the worst with minus 5.44. So really some big red flags here for American Airlines, while for Southwest Airlines and Spirit Energy is actually quite okay. You can also look at the Altman Z score, which is a critic strength test that assesses the likelihood of bankruptcy. We want this in general to be above 1.8, which is obviously again challenging for these companies given the situation. But we can see that Southwest Airlines is outperforming the others. They have a 1.73. The worst one again is American Airlines with minus 0.08. So again, huge red flag. Delta Airlines also pretty dire here with 0.19. On the Piotrowski score, we want to understand again the strength of the financial position. We want this to be equal above 5, and again, no surprise, over the last 12 months these companies are scoring bad and they all have 3 to 2. Back to the overview, we first looked at the return on invested capital, and all of them were scoring poorly, but Spirit Energy was doing the best, followed by United and American Airlines. On the levered free cash flow, Southwest Airlines were outperforming the others. They had a positive 3.41%, so really good. The next one, United Airlines, had a minus 16%, so a huge difference between the two. On the total ratio, Spirit Energy was doing the best, followed by Southwest Airlines, and American Airlines were doing the worst. A big red flag on them. Similar story on the debt equity. Southwest Airlines doing the best, followed by Spirit, and the worst one was American Airlines. So usually we would take a look at the shareholder value, the dividend and buyback that has been returned to shareholders, but we thought for these companies specific it would be more interesting to look a bit more into their debt profile. And basically what we can see on the total debt change over the last year, Delta Airlines has raised $25 billion, and all of this is done in different ways. It can be issuance of shares, it can be government relief, it can be a change to the frequent flyer programs where they've also made different deals. Delta Airlines specifically has raised $9 billion through this huge amount. Southwest Airlines, $8 billion. American Airlines, $7.5 billion. $13 billion for United Airlines, and around $1.3 billion for Spirit Energy, which is obviously a lot smaller than the other ones. However, to compare them in the best possible way, we want to look at the net debt, and that is basically the net debt of the book value of the company's gross debt less any cash or similar on their balance sheet. So again, this number will represent how much the company is owing to their creditors after withdrawing whatever cash they have on their balance sheet. So the net debt gives a much more complete picture of the debt situation of the companies, how bad it is, and it's much easier to compare the companies using this metric. And as we can see here, Southwest Airlines has a minus 3.5 billion, so they have more cash that can cover their debt, and it's just a clear illustration on how strong their balance sheet is compared to some of the other companies. I think Southwest Airlines has never fired any people in the 50-year history. They have the worst year ever in history, and still they haven't laid off any people. That is quite impressive. On the other hand, the other company still has quite high debt levels. Delta Airlines, $13.3 billion. American Airlines, again, really bad, $24 billion. $13.4 billion for United Airlines, and $1.3 for Spirit Energy, which is not really that bad. However, we need to consider that they are also a lot smaller than the other companies. But Southwest Airlines, again, definitely standing out to be the best among the companies. We can then move into the earnings per share and growth, and basically we want to understand whether the companies will grow in the future. And if we take a look at the earnings per share forecast for the next year, it becomes quite evident that it's also going to be a challenging 2021 for all the companies. The only one that is expected to have a positive EPS is Southwest Airlines with 0.23. The rest has a minus. So although vaccines are coming, people are getting vaccinated and traveling will pick up, it will still be a tough year because it will take time before everybody is being vaccinated are going to start traveling again. We can also take a look at the revenue growth for the last 12 months, and obviously all of them, their revenue has just bombed down completely. So again, it's just to take a look about who is doing the best among very bad numbers. Spirit Energy doing the best, followed by Southwest Airlines. On the net profit growth for the last 12 months, it's a similar story. It's just to look on the differences. And again, Spirit Energy doing the best, followed by Southwest Airlines, Delta Airlines, United Airlines, and the worst one is American Airlines with almost a minus 600%. So again, going back to the overview, we first looked at the EPS growth forecast for the next year. Southwest Airlines doing the best, followed by Delta Airlines and Spirit. On the revenue growth for the last 12 months, Spirit Airlines doing the best, followed by Southwest Airlines. Similar story on the net profit growth. Spirit Airlines doing the best, followed by Southwest Airlines, Delta Airlines, United Airlines, and American Airlines doing really poor with almost minus 600%. The next section is to look whether the companies are currently under or overvalued. We have different ways of doing that. One way is to get the PEG ratio and Peter Lynch fair value. However, due to different reasons, we cannot assess this meaningfully, so we will skip it over. We can then go to my own estimated intrinsic value, which is based on a lot of different numbers and assumptions. And based on that, I see an upside on Delta Airlines on a small 0.7%. A bigger one on Southwest Airlines on 12%, a downside on American Airlines of almost 22.5%, downside on United Airlines on almost 18%, and a downside on Spirit Energy of almost 13%. You can also look at the beta ratio, and if it's above 1, it means that the stocks are more volatile than the general market, and obviously all of them, given the current circumstances, are more volatile than the general market. We can then have a look at some other value indicators. One of them is to look at the book value per share, and what we can see here is that all companies, with the exception of Spirit Energy, is overvalued. So Spirit Energy is actually quite undervalued from this parameter. We can also look at the relative strength index for the last 14 days. We want this to be below 30, it means it's oversold and it may go in an uptrend. If it's above 70, it means that it's overbought and it may do a pullback. And all companies, with the exception of Southwest Airlines, which is not too far from the 70 mark, are all in the overbought territory. And I guess that's quite natural given the recent uptrend that the stocks have gone into due to the vaccine. So this may give an indication that the stocks will pull back a little bit at some point. So keep that in mind if you're considering to invest in them tomorrow. Finally, we can take a look at the analyst recommendation and what their perspective are, and in general, just use them to kind of like benchmark with my own numbers. Are they aligned or not? I will not follow them blindly just because they sometimes have their own agenda. So we can have a look at the consensus price target, which is just the middle ground estimates of all the analysts. And what we can see is they're actually quite positive on most of the companies. So all of them, with the exception of American Airlines, actually has a small upside. It's not a huge one, but a small upside. American Airlines has a downside on around 10%, so that's quite aligned with my own estimate that American Airlines is overvalued as of today. So based on all the elements that we just ran over, our overall value assessment is that Delta Airlines is fair valued, Southwest Airlines is the only undervalued company, American Airlines and United Airlines are both overvalued, and Spirit Energy is fairly valued. So to conclude, what is our general feeling on all these stocks? Well, it's a mixed bag of apples. Some of them looks quite okay, but some of them also looks really bad. So if we first take a look at Delta Airlines, we would not touch them. They simply have too high debt and they have in general pretty poor results, so we would stay away from them. Southwest Airlines, it's the most solid stock out there of all the 5. They are undervalued, but there's not a huge upside in our opinion, so keep that in mind, but it is definitely the best among the bunch. American Airlines, for us, is the worst among the bunch. They have an extreme high debt, and the poor results were already happening before the crisis, so it's only gotten worse. We wouldn't touch American Airlines under any circumstance. We would actually still be a little bit in doubt as to whether they are actually going to survive in the long run. So again, we would not encourage anybody to invest in them as of today. Then we have United Airlines. Again, we wouldn't really like to touch them. We also feel that they have too high debt and in general also pretty poor results compared to at least Southwest Airlines. And finally, we have Spirit Airlines. We actually think they have relatively acceptable numbers across the board, and they have quite good long-term value compared to their 52-week high. So we would say that Spirit Airlines, for us at least on the numbers, looks quite interesting. They're not as strong as Southwest Airlines, but we feel that they are a relatively safe play and there could actually be quite good upside on them in the long term. We would argue that it is not the right time to invest given the RSI is quite high, but if there comes a pullback on them in the next weeks, we may actually consider to enter into any position with them. This was all we had for today. Please keep in mind that we are not professional financial advisors and this is only done for entertainment purposes. You need to do your own due diligence before you take an active investment decision. However, we hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for future content. Please give it us a like. It helps with the algorithm. Please provide a comment in the comment section. We always appreciate to get your input. And we can see sometimes that you have some news that we have missed. So please let us know so that can help the whole community. Besides that, there's not much more to say than have a nice evening and stay safe. See you next time.